guys, how's it going? And welcome back to Kitchen Table Meta. So in today's Meta Monday video, I have a very exciting topic that I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time, and that is playing for a draw bad? Now, before we get into this topic, I want to make a big disclaimer here. I'll probably have it flashing everywhere. I am not talking about slow play. Do not slow play your opponent. It is scummy. It is against the rules. This is not what I'm talking about. I am talking about, is drawing a bad strategy? Is doing it incorrect? Is it against the rules in any way? Is it a scummy strategy? That's what I'm talking about. I am not talking about slow playing. Do not slow play. It is bad. It is not a good thing to do. Now, before we get into the video, though, I want to take a quick second and tell you guys, thank you so much for all the feedback I've got from my box opening video. If you guys haven't seen my Draft Box 3 box opening video, I'll have it up here so you guys can click it. It'll also be in the description below. But I'm doing a giveaway where I'm giving away the promo pack from that draft box. It's a promo pack for Volume 4. I'm giving that away, and all you have to do to enter is just go to that video and comment in the comment section ways I can improve my channel. Now, I'm really trying to do that for you guys. I've always tried to make the content for you, make content that the community wants to see, and I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm on track and if there's anything I can do. You guys have given me insane feedback and a lot of good ideas that I'm definitely going to be doing. I'm already starting to work on some of them, so just please let me know. Keep up the good feedback. I love you guys so much, and thank you so much for the support. So, okay, let's get back into our topic, and that is, is playing for a draw bad? Now, again, I cannot make this any more clear. Do not slow play. That is not what we're talking about. But what is a draw? What is playing for a draw? What does that mean? And so there's two scenarios where you'll see players possibly play for a draw. Number one is if they win game one, right, and they're trying to draw or finish the game, game two, they're trying to draw that game. If you win game one, you draw game two, you actually win the match. So you'll win out the match because you won. It was a draw. You've won one game. Your opponent has won none. You win that match. The second is in game number three. So let's say you win game number one, your opponent wins game number two, you go into game three, you'll see players play for a draw there where they'll go, okay, maybe I can't win against this deck after they've sideboard, which is a very common tactic. Let's say your deck is very good game one before your opponent can sideboard. You win that match. You win game. You lose game two because they have a perfect sideboard plan against you. You go into game three and you go, listen, there's no way I can win this game. Let's just try to draw it, and we'll win. We'll draw, so I won't get a loss. So if you win game one, your opponent wins game two, you get a draw. If you draw game three, which means you both. You get either a win or a loss, you still get a draw. Now, draws are still worth points, so they are better than losing, which you'll see people do that. Now, the whole purpose of this Meta Monday is to see, is it a bad thing to do? And I'm going to tell you right now, just straight up, it is not. And it's actually a very viable strategy in a lot of other card games. Now, for some reason, in this card game, I see a lot of players in the comment section of my stream whenever I'm streaming the events, or just in YouTube videos or whatever, they'll really kind of be like, that guy's trying to draw. That's ridiculous. He shouldn't be allowed to do that. And I'm telling you guys, like I said, in a lot of other card games and a lot of other games in general, it's a very valid strategy. And there's a couple ways you can do it. I want to cover the strategies that you can do to draw or to try to play for the draw. Now, keep in mind, with this is it's really important to realize that a lot of good players, they know how to counter this strategy. And so it's actually like its own little meta game. This is a very advanced strategy. It may seem very simple, but I've seen a lot of players be able to counter the defensive playstyle or the drawing playstyle, which I'll talk about in the video as well. But first up, the most common way that you play for a draw or that you can get draws, and that is the lock. There's a lot of different ways that you can lock your opponent out. In our game and other games, one of my favorite stories to talk about is I actually played Magic in the West Virginia State Championship. And what I did during that event is I played this deck. It was called a Venser deck. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the deck, but I want to explain what a lock is and how I achieved it with this deck. And there was a card called Stonehorn Dignitary. Now, what this card does is when you play this card out, your opponent is unable to attack you next time they could attack. So during their turn, when they attack you, they just have to skip their attack phase. They're not allowed to attack you. But then Venser is a planeswalker that you can choose a card, you can remove it from the game, you can bring it back in. And so what you would do is you would play Stonehorn Dignitary. They'd have to skip their attack step. On your turn, you would just bounce out some home territory, bring it back. Again, they have to skip their attack phase, and you would just keep doing that. Now in Magic, you only get one chance to attack. You only get the one attack phase attack. It's not like Dragon Ball where you can attack and then play something and attack again. In Magic, you have to. There's a certain phase that you can only attack in that phase, and you have to attack with everything that you want to attack in that phase. You can't attack like one at a time or anything like that. There are some special circumstances, but in general, that's how it is. And so what I would do against a lot of my opponents is I would just sit down, I would get them into that lock, and I would just refuse to kill them. I would just sit there, I would keep doing it, I would keep doing it, I would keep doing it. I would just never attack them, never try to kill them, and then I'd wait until the round was almost over, and then I would kill my opponent. Okay, and then my opponent wouldn't have a chance to play a second game, right? After you do sideboarding, after you do mulligans, all that stuff, we just wouldn't have time to play a second game. Now, looking at that, you might say, Dusty, that's ridiculous. Like, that's not fair. That's not a good strategy. But it absolutely was a good strategy. And a lot of people, even when I tell this story, they'll say, well, there's nothing like that in Dragon Ball. But there is. The Universe 9 decks with Bergamino, if you have two of them out, your opponent's actually unable to attack you. And so you can do the same thing against your opponent. You could sit there with both of those out and just be like, hey man, you can't attack me. Sorry, you can't attack me. They have barrier. There's nothing you can do about it. I'll just sit here and wait, for the round to almost be over, and then I'll kill you. Now, this may seem like a really unfair strategy, and a lot of people, when I explain this to them, they go, this is super unfair, dude. It's super cheesy. Like, how is your opponent supposed to beat it? How are they supposed to get out of this lock? So I'm going to teach you guys how to beat it, and it's very, very simple. You just scoop. So that might seem really weird, but that's absolutely what you do. And I found that out very fast when I started playing in the top tables at the states championship, right? When I played against good players, once they saw me get that lock on them with, Venser, they would just scoop. They would go, okay, you've got your combo together. There's nothing I can do to beat this right now. Let's just scoop it up and go into the next game. And they would sideboard for it. They would sideboard for it. They would sideboard into a more aggressive deck, and they would just kill me before I can get the lock going. And that's very common, and that's how you beat it. And I see that not happen a lot in Dragon Ball, which is both a testament to how awesome of a game Dragon Ball is, because Dragon Ball always gives you this feeling that you have a chance to win, right? Dragon Ball always feels like, you know what? I can win. If I just draw these right cards, or if I get him in the right position, I can win. Where a lot of other card games aren't like that. There's a lot of situations you get yourself into other card games when you go, you know what, there's no way I could win here. Let's save some time in the round. Let's scoop it up. Let's get to our next game. Let's make sure we can play all three of those games. And it's a very good way to play against the draw. If you see your opponent, get into a position where they're absolutely going to win, there's nothing you can do to win, and they're just eating up the clock by passing and not allowing you to be able to win the game, just scoop it up. Just go, okay, you know what? I'm not going to let you eat any more of this clock. I want to make sure I can get a second game going. I want to make sure I can get into a third game. I'm going to scoop up my cards. Let's make sure we can play these games. Now, is there any other way you can stall out the game? Is there any other ways that you can play for a draw? And this is the most common way, the next way I'm going to talk about, and that is the defensive approach. And we see a lot of players do this on stream when they think they might lose, or they get into a situation where they're like, you know what, I don't think I can beat this guy enough time. Let me play super defensively. Now, how can you play defensively in our game? How can you play for a draw with defensive cards? Now, the first thing is I call negate control. That's just negate cards that completely shut down your opponent's turn. There's two of them in the game. One sees a lot of play, which is obviously Flying Nimbus. That's a card that gets a lot of play. And the second one is one that gets not as much play. That's a Raccoon Eraser Gun. And I actually built a fog deck with these cards. I used SS3 Goku, and I made it blue, yellow, and I just played these two cards. And I would get to a spot where my opponent just couldn't attack me. They would go to attack, I'd be like, nope. Raccoon Eraser Gun, you can't attack anymore this turn. Mag turn, cool, I'll just play out some more blockers, I'll play defensively, and I just essentially stalled the game out. I made it so they could never really attack me. I played it with apes, and then I eventually get to a spot where I just had so many blockers and so many negates that they could never get an offense going, and then I would kill them, whenever I felt like I was in a situation where they couldn't recover from. Now, speaking of blockers, that's another good way to stall out the game. You can do this with the free blockers. You can do this with revenge blockers that can actually eliminate threats once they do block. Apes is a great way to do it, full power. Frieza is another good way to do it. Now that card is actually really vulnerable to removal, but if you can get it online and protect it, it's such a powerful blocker. It's a card we don't see utilized very much. And the next one is the last kind of way to kind of defensively draw out the game is with stalling cards. Now that's Vegito from the Ultimate Box, which has been an absolutely strong card. Bergamo does the same thing. It stalls out the game, right? You have to attack this card. As long as you can protect that card, your opponent just can't get an offense going. They have to waste their attacks into this card that doesn't really benefit them from killing or dealing with. And the new set 5 cards, I'll put them up here for you guys to see, but they do the same thing. If they're in rested mode, your opponent can't attack leader cards until they deal with that card, which is another great way to stall out the game. Now, going into like we did with the lock, how do you beat defensive cards? Now, again, this happened to me when I played in Richmond. I played in the Richmond Regional, and in round 6, I had an opponent. We were playing the Soul Striker Mirror. If you guys aren't familiar with the Soul Striker Mirror, it was almost impossible to play 3 games. So I won game 1. He won game 2. When we got into game 3, he was like, a draw was fine with me. Now, I had too many draws. I had like, I think 2 draws or 3 draws, and I was really afraid if I got a 4th draw, it would really hurt my chances of getting the top cut. So I knew I had to get a win here, okay? But I knew my opponent was going to play defensively, right? That's just what you do, right? And so what I did is I sideboarded out all my negates. All my defensive cards I sideboarded out, and I replaced them with ways to self-awaken, because it's really important to get awakened as soon as possible. You get more card advantage, you put more pressure on your opponent, and more aggressive cards. I put in all the aggressive cards I could, and my goal was just to be aggressive. When you know that your opponent's playing against, when you know you're playing against a defensive opponent, the best thing you can do is be aggressive. Now, why is this? Because most of the time, if you're aggressive versus a defensive opponent, you'll run out of gas, right? You'll run out of cards, and they'll actually win the late game, right? You'll have almost no cards in hand. If you can't get through their defenses, and it takes so many of your cards to do it, then they're just going to sit there with card advantage and bigger threats and beat you. Now, when your opponent's playing for the draw, though, right, you have a limited amount of time. And so often these games don't get into the late game. And so playing aggressively, really there's no downside, right? You either kill them and you get a win, or you fail to do that and you get a draw. Either way, you know, it's a win-win for you. So be aggressive when you think that your opponent's going to be defensive and play for this draw on game 3. Now I'm going to share one more story with you that happened with me in Dragon Ball in this situation. It's another reason to scoop. If there's anything I want you guys to take away from this, is once we get into these, you know, Dragon Ball is a game that takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of skill, it takes a lot of planning. There's a lot of thinking that goes into this game, and because of that, matches often go to draws, more so than some of the other games that I've played. Now, what's really important to remember is with set 5 coming out, the format is slowing down a lot. It's going to go back to like set 2, set 1, where a lot of games have a chance, if you don't play fast, if you don't, you know, make smart plays, it's very easy for these games to go to draws. Now, and again, in Richmond, and in top 32 match, I played Peter Katani. Now, we were playing the Soul Striker Mirror. He was on the PPG Soul Striker. Now, I actually played that deck like 4 times in Swiss, so I was very familiar with how to beat the deck. And I felt like my Soul Striker deck was built to beat the Soul Striker Mirror, so I was very confident in that matchup. Now, however, in the Soul Striker Mirror, we had a situation where it's really important to awaken. If you don't awaken on time, usually using result of training, then you fall very behind very quickly. And so what happened was, in the first game we played, I was unable to awaken, right? We got to turn 5, I was unable to draw results, I couldn't draw on turn 6, I couldn't draw on turn 7. When it came to my turn 8, I drew my card, it wasn't results, and I scooped. I just picked my cards up, and I was like, I scoop. And I know it surprised Peter. He was like, whoa, what? Like, you know, this is just like, you know, we were in like the first maybe 15 minutes of the game, and he was just like, what do you mean you scoop? And I was like, nope, let's go to the next game. Because I knew that I had a much higher chance of winning a game where I awaken against Peter, and I really wanted to make sure that we can get 3 games in. Now, in top 32, they still calculate time. You still have a time limit. I don't know why. That's just how it is. And so I knew that it was really imperative that we get 3 games in. And so we moved to the game 2. You know, I won that game, being able to awaken. We still hit time though, and we, you know, the game was decided in like sudden death. We started a game in sudden death, but that's a different story for a different day. What's important to realize is that I try to put myself in a situation where I could play all 3 games, because I felt I was favored when I was able to play a real game. I didn't want to play from behind, because that's wasting time. That's burning up the clock. And honestly, if I would have scooped sooner, I would have had a better chance in the 3rd game, sudden death, as well. So it's just something to keep in mind. Remember that playing for the draw is not a bad thing to do. It's something that you should learn. It's something you should master, because it's a tool that you can use, you know, to eke out wins that maybe you shouldn't, or maybe you know, to put yourself in a situation to get a draw where maybe you would have got a loss because you know that you can't beat that matchup or you can't win. It's also an important thing to master and learn how to beat. you know, it's sit down with your friends, sit down with your playtest partner and say, okay, let's pretend like we have 5 minutes left in this round. How do we play it? How do we sideboard differently? How do we go into this matchup? Learn it, master it, because it is something that you'll use in not only Dragon Ball Super, but in almost every card game that you play. All right, guys, so I hope you learned a lot from this video. Like I said, again, I am not encouraging slow play. Please, please do not slow play, but do try to take some time and master what it is to play for the draw and to defend against people that are being defensive. And playing against a draw, I promise you, it'll up your game and it'll really give you a new outlook of how the game is played at a competitive level. Guys, if you have any questions about this, let me know in the comment section below. I always love hearing from you guys. I always love talking to you guys about these topics. It's always a blast. It's always something I love to do. Now, remember that if you do have a chance, please go to my box opening video and give me some comments on how I can improve the channel, guys. I'm really trying hard to make the channel better and to give it, you know, a channel that the community wants to come to and that you guys can learn something from. So if you have any suggestions, no matter how small you think it may be, it really does help. And I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for the love and support. I cannot thank you guys enough. You guys have been amazing. You guys have been so supportive, and we'll see you next time.